Himeji Castle is a national treasure, and in 1993 it was placed on the UNESCO World Cultural Heritage List. Because of its striking beauty and elegance, it's popularly known as the White Egret Castle. But in fact, it was designed as an impregnable fortress. The entire castle is protected by massive walls of stone. The individual stones of all sizes are fitted together with superb skill. Their height and angle were carefully worked out to repel attacking forces and to make it as hard as possible for them to scale the walls. Any attackers that did manage to get inside the castle would have to make various detours before they could finally reach the main gate. Defending troops would be stationed at slit-like gaps in the walls. The soldiers posted at these openings could aim at the enemy with their bows and arrows or firearms. The path leading to the base of the donjon tower is narrow and winding and also runs uphill. As the crow flies, the distance from the first gate to the tower is just 130 meters. However, attackers trying to reach it would have to climb a route at least 3 times longer. The path veers sharply to the left, making the donjon seem a long way behind instead of being in front. This would confuse the attackers, leaving them exhausted and demoralized. Most of the great Japanese castles were built during a time span of only about 50 years, starting in the second half of the 16th century, towards the end of the period of civil war. They were surrounded by massive walls of stone and were virtually impregnable. From the early 17th century, a long period of peace was established. The castles were no longer used as military fortresses, and the role of the donjons was greatly diminished. The castles became merely the seats of regional power. Nijo Castle was built to accommodate the shogun when he visited Kyoto. Ninomaru Palace inside the castle was where the shogun received envoys from the imperial court, so it was adorned with lavish decorations. Over the centuries, many of the once magnificent donjons were destroyed, and those that survived fell into ruin. After World War II, however, many cities began repairing or reconstructing their castles. They were anxious to keep alive their history as castle towns and also to create tourist attractions. There was a boom in rebuilding the old structures. No fewer than 36 of the capital cities of Japan's 47 prefectures were originally castle towns. Today, their castles are popular sightseeing attractions, drawing numerous visitors all year round.
Stuart, do you have any thoughts on the video?
Well, it's very interesting that many of Japan's castles were completely reconstructed during the 20th century. They just look old from the outside. Of course, a good point about that is that they're often fitted with lifts, so we don't have to climb up all those wooden stairs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Stuart, you come from Britain,
Yes.
Which is full of ancient castles.
Yes, and I find all castles fascinating.
You must notice many similarities and differences.
Yes, indeed. One thing is the location of Japanese castles. Many British castles are located in areas that today are rather rural. For example, many Welsh castles are located in dramatic locations beside the sea in the midst of beautiful scenery. So they have a really romantic atmosphere, rather like the castles in fairy tales. But many Japanese castles are built in the middle of big towns and cities. Why is that?
Well, it's the other way around. In many cases, the castles were first built and then the town developed around them. So as a result, you can see castles in the big cities.
Ah, I see. Another thing that interests me is that Japanese castles had stone walls for outer protection, like European castles.
Yes.
But the main towers were built of wood. most fortresses in Britain were entirely built of stone, with only constructions inside having wooden roofs, so it wasn't so easy to burn them down.
Right.
Why didn't the Japanese do the same?
That's a good question. Probably the Japanese at that time had no idea of constructing buildings with materials other than wood.
Anyway, I think we're all glad to see old castles rebuilt. That rarely happens to ruined castles in the West. And even if they're built of concrete, they still make a great tourist attraction.
Especially when there is a lift inside, right?
Absolutely.
Words and culture 言葉の裏にある文化の違いを考えてみましょう。今日のテーマは城の歴史と言葉についてです。日本と西洋にはどんな違いがあるのでしょうか。
今日は日本とヨーロッパの城の歴史を簡単に見てみましょう。日本では中世の間、城といえば山城が主流でした。山の高さや地形を生かし、土塁や堀を作って天然の要塞に仕立てたものです。それが戦国の信長、秀吉、家康の時代になると、巨大な石垣と天守を持つ城が次々と建てられるようになりました。その後、平和な江戸時代になると、戦いのための城は無用ということになります。城を新しく建てることが禁止され、中世の山城も多くが潰されます。残ったのはほとんどが秀吉、家康時代の城でした。このような歴史から現在お城という言葉から我々がイメージするのは大概この時代のタイプなんですね。一方西洋では多種多様な城があります。古代ローマの時代から石や木、土などさまざまな素材を使った城が建てられ、中世には石造りの堅固な要塞も誕生しました。近世になると王や権力者の住まいとして窓の多い華やかな城が多く作られました。英語では石で全体が覆われた要塞のような城を一般的にフォートレスと言います。また王の住まいを兼ねた装飾性の強い城をキャッスルというふうに呼んでいます。そして軍事的な機能を持たない宮殿はパレスです。その国の歴史や文化と一緒に言葉を学ぶと興味も湧いてきますね。